Disney Pixar Brave. King Fergus and Queen Eleanor ruled the kingdom of Dunbroch in Scotland. They had triplet sons and one daughter, the beautiful Princess Merida. All four children were mischievous. Queen Eleanor tried to teach Merida how to behave like a perfect princess. But Merida liked to slip away from the palace to practice with a bow and arrow. She was a skilled archer. One night, the queen announced that 3 clans were coming to visit. Each would present a suitor to compete for Merida's hand in marriage. Merida was horrified. "I won't go through with it," she shouted. To Merida's dismay, the suitors arrived as planned. Merida sat waiting on her throne for the archery contest to begin. She knew she could handle a bow and arrow far better than the suitors could. Once the suitors had taken their shots, Merida marched onto the field. The queen yelled for her to stop, but Merida didn't listen. She fired her arrows and hit each target dead center. She had won. Now she wouldn't have to marry anyone. Queen Eleanor was furious at Merida for ruining the contest. She warned that things needed to be set right. "Marriage is what you want," Merida shouted. Then she slashed the tapestry that depicted her family and ran away. Merida fled deep into the woods, where mysterious blue will-o'-the-wisps led her to a cottage. Inside, she found a witch. Merida begged her to change her mother. The witch gave Merida a spell cake. Back at the castle, Merida presented the cake to her mother. She watched closely as Eleanor took a bite. At first, nothing happened, but then Eleanor began to feel sick. Merida helped Eleanor into bed. The next thing Merida knew, a huge furry shape was rising from the sheets. The witch's cake had turned Eleanor into a bear. Worried her mother was in danger, Merida sneaked her out of the castle. Merida and Eleanor Bear first went to the witch's cottage and only found a message. "Fate be changed, look inside, mend the bond torn by pride." Merida would need time to figure out its meaning, but for now she needed to teach her mother to fish. Merida realized that to mend the bond and break the spell, she must repair the tapestry she had torn. After sneaking into the castle, Merida and her mother were discovered by King Fergus. The king drew his sword. "It's not what you think," Merida cried. The king wouldn't listen. He slashed at the bear, who struck back, knocking him to the ground. The noise drew the visiting lords and their sons. Terrified, Eleanor Bear raced from the castle. Merida grabbed a needle and thread and the tapestry, then jumped on her horse. She took her little brothers too. They had eaten the spell cake and turned into bear cubs. Merida sued as they all raced to save their mother. When Merida arrived, she wrapped the mended tapestry over her mother. "I want you back, Mum," Merida cried. "I love you." King Fergus was shocked to realize the bear was his beloved wife. Merida felt a hand brush her hair. The spell had been broken. Eleanor was human once again. The triplets were no longer bears. The queen smiled at Merida. From then on, Merida could be a princess and be herself.
Disney
Pocahontas. Once there lived an adventurous young princess named Pocahontas. She loved running free throughout the land she called home. Pocahontas and her friend Nakoma spent many hours exploring together. Floating down the river in their canoe, they were in awe of the untouched beauty around them. Pocahontas would even leap from the peak of a tall waterfall. The princess was a free spirit, always on the lookout for adventure. Whenever she found herself troubled, Pocahontas would consult a mystical tree named Grandmother Willow. "All around you are spirits, child," the wise tree would say. "They live in the earth, the water, the sky. If you listen, they will guide you." While Pocahontas gazed out over the tops of trees, she saw billowing white clouds. But these clouds were unlike any she had seen before. They were actually the sails of a large wooden ship. Pocahontas watched from afar as the ship with its many strangers came to shore. The men aboard were settlers on a hunt for gold, and they believed that they could claim this new land for themselves. But one of the men, John Smith, seemed kind and gentle. Pocahontas followed him through the forest until he suddenly spotted her. Though she knew she should be cautious of strangers, Pocahontas stepped forward. And as the two came together, a magical breeze swirled around them. They could suddenly understand each other's language. Even though they were very different, Pocahontas and John became friends. While exploring, Pocahontas showed him what Grandmother Willow had taught her. Things in nature are connected. They are all one. When Pocahontas introduced John to Grandmother Willow, he was very surprised. But the Great Spirit told Pocahontas that John had a good soul. He was a man she could trust. However, tensions were building between Pocahontas' tribe and the settlers from John's ship. Neither group trusted the other. Pocahontas tried to encourage her father to talk to the strangers, but the chief would not listen. One night, John met Pocahontas in Grandmother Willow's glade. He wanted to protect Pocahontas and her people. The two kissed. They had fallen in love. But as they embraced, warriors from Pocahontas' tribe arrived and captured John. Pocahontas visited him later in secret. "No matter what happens," John Smith said, "I will always be with you, forever." The next day, as the tribe prepared for war with the settlers, Pocahontas bravely stepped forward to tell her father that she loved John Smith. Hurting John would only mean more war. The chief listened to his daughter and freed John instead. But John was injured. He had to return home. Pocahontas wanted to go with him, but she knew that her tribe needed her. "I will always be with you, forever," Pocahontas said as she kissed him goodbye. Disney, Mulan. Thousands of years ago in ancient China, there lived a beautiful young woman named Mulan. She lived with her parents and a dog named Little Brother. Mulan's father had once been a great warrior, but his leg had been injured in battle. As an only child, Mulan felt responsible for upholding the family honor. One day, a man arrived with terrible news from the emperor. The Huns, China's enemy, had invaded. The emperor had ordered that one man from every family must join the imperial army. Mulan's aging father had to fight. Again. Mulan knew her father was too old to fight. Late that night, she made a big decision. After saying a prayer to the ancestors, she used a sword to cut her hair short. Then she put on her father's warrior clothes. As her parents slept, Mulan, now dressed as a young man, jumped onto her father's horse, Khan. Then she raced off to join the imperial army in her father's place. Somehow she would find a way to bring honor to her family. When Mulan arrived at the imperial army's training camp, she met Captain Li Shang. "What is your name?" he asked Mulan. "My name is Ping," Mulan said. To her amazement, Shang and the other soldiers believed she was a man. Shang worked hard to teach his soldiers strength and discipline. Mulan struggled to keep up. Frustrated, Shang told her to go home. But to earn the soldiers' respect, Mulan retrieved an arrow atop a tall pole. This was the hardest training task of all, and Mulan had done it. Mulan was not alone on her journey. A dragon named Mushu, sent from the ancestors to be her guardian, and a cricket named Cricky were always at her side. Working together, they wrote a fake letter ordering Shang and his soldiers to go after the Huns. Now Mulan would get a chance to bring honor to her family. Heeding the letter's message, Shang led his soldiers into the mountains. Suddenly, they were surrounded by thousands of Huns. Mulan got an idea. She grabbed the very last cannon and, using Mushu's flame, lit the fuse. The cannon caused a massive avalanche of snow to fall on the Huns. But the danger wasn't over. Snow was now racing toward Mulan and her friends. Mulan's loyal horse Khan ran to her side. She jumped onto his back, and just as the snow was about to bury Shang, Mulan pulled him to safety. During the battle, Mulan had been injured. While caring for her wound, a medic realized that Pink was a woman. Shang had no choice but to leave Mulan behind. As she sat with Khan, Mushu, and Cricky, Mulan felt she had failed her family and herself. Then she heard the Huns' voices. Mulan raced to the imperial city to warn Shang. "The Huns are alive," she told him. "They are in the city." But Shang felt betrayed by Mulan and did not trust her. Mulan tried warning the others, but no one would believe her. The Hun leader, Shan Yu, kidnapped the emperor, but Mulan and Shang rescued him. Furious, Shan Yu chased Mulan onto the palace roof, exactly as she planned. Mulan grabbed Shan Yu's sword and pinned his coat to the roof. He couldn't move when Mushu and Cricky shot a rocket his way. The force of the explosion sent Mushu and Cricky flying through the air. Mulan and Shang fell together to the ground as fireworks began to fill the sky. The people were celebrating. The Huns had been banished and the imperial city was safe. The emperor was very grateful to Mulan. "You have saved us all," he said, and then he did something extraordinary. The emperor bowed to Mulan. Everyone in the plaza bowed to Mulan too. The emperor asked her to stay on as his advisor, but Mulan knew it was time to return to her family. At home, Mulan presented her father with a sword given to her by the emperor. "The greatest gift and honor is having you for a daughter," her father said. "I have missed you so." "Excuse me," said a voice behind them. "Does Mulan live here?" Shang had brought Mulan her helmet, and she invited him to stay for dinner.